Today on the Carolina Storyteller, we're going to be revisiting some old stories, going to Polly's Island, South Carolina, and Sullivan's Island, South Carolina. So get ready. This is the Carolina Storyteller.
The dark woods where shadows creep, stories rise as the campfire leaps. Jonathan's voice a haunting thrill, with every tale he bends on will. Echoes whisper, the night draws near. By the firelight our fears collide, the Carolina Storyteller our guide. Through the spooky, the feathering fight, fables of darkness igniting the night of the night.
That was weird. But anyway, don't know why I made that mistake. If you didn't hear it, that's okay. I did. Welcome back to the Carolina Storyteller, folks. I am your storyteller, Jonathan Miller. It's a pleasure being here with you. Today, we're finally back in a video format. I got a new computer. Thanks to the cast of Valmont the Black Raven Chronicles. Shout out to you guys. And if you're not listening to Valmont the Black Raven Chronicles, you really need to, because episode 10 is about to hit. We are at the peak of the roller coaster. Things are going to go crazy. It's going to get a little loud. It's going to get a little spicy. Is some people going to die? Maybe, probably, possibly. I don't know. I didn't do it. Okay, maybe I did do it. I'm not telling you. I'm just saying you need to go and listen to Valmont the Black Raven Chronicles. And of course, you can get ad-free episodes of this show and Valmont the Black Raven Chronicles on our Patreon, patreon.com/The Carolina Storyteller. Ad-free episodes, early releases of episodes. You get all kinds of extra bonus stuff. You get to talk with the cast from Valmont when they're on there, access to the Discord. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't be on the Patreon for just $1 a month. You can join the Valmont tier and get all the Valmont stuff early and the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's awesome. Shameless plugs are done. Not really. If you're in the Charleston area, September 5th, I'm going to be, should be this Friday, I'm going to be at the Terrace Theater at 10 p.m., opening for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'll be sharing a spooky story, and then we'll be enjoying a shadow cast from Charleston Absent Friends, who are some great folks who I have been working with recently, them and the Midnight Terrors podcast, and these are just awesome people. And you never know, you might hear some next year when Valmont comes back for season 2. So we have that coming up. Colonial Day 2025. It's the 4th annual Colonial Day. It'll be September 27th at Old Santee Canal Park. The Carolina Storyteller is going to be there telling some stories, sharing some spooky stuff. Then on October 3rd, I'll be back at the Terrace Theater at 10 o'clock at night to do another story with the Halloween vibe going. We're getting ready for the spooky season. Well, we're already in the spooky season every day of my life, but for the normies, they're getting into the spooky season. I know some of you might think, well, I don't get into spooky season during October. I don't consider myself a normie. Look, a spooky season does not start for you on January 1st at least. You're not at the level yet that you need to be. You could be spookier. Okay? We'll talk about it. October 16th, 17th, and 18th, if you're in the Charleston area, head over to Halloween at the Swamp at Cypress Gardens Road. The Carolina Storyteller is going to be there again, telling stories, spooking people out, having a good time. October 24th and 25th, I'm going to be back at the Terrace Theater again with the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Charleston Absent Friends. And during the day, October 25th, I'm going to be at Wanamaker Park for Charleston's Halloween Festival there, where, we're going to do some more spooky stories. Just face it, that's all I do is spooky stories, okay? If you're expecting something else by now, move on. We're not going to do it, okay? Spooky stories, that's what I do. So, this episode is a revisit. We are coming up on 100 episodes. And honestly, it's more than 100 when you count the bonus episodes, the Christmas stories, things like that. We're reaching that point, and I wanted to go back and I wanted to tell some of the older stories that I've told. I wanted to revisit them and maybe give them a fresh spin. And I thought, well, how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to do them in sections. So I'm going to start with the coast. That's where I grew up. I grew up on the beach. I grew up loving the beach. I grew up in a most of my childhood was at a place called Pawleys Island, South Carolina. It is a small island off of the coast, um, right off of Highway 17 between Georgetown and Myrtle Beach. Um, and this 2 mile long island is famous for a spirit that has, for years, walked the beach, um, greeting the visitors of the island in times of need. So let me tell you the story, okay? Way back in like the 1700s, when Pawleys Island was, of course, very small, which it's still very small, but there wasn't a lot of people there. We didn't have weather tracking services, but there was a young merchant sailor staying who lived in one of the houses there with his family. Now, this man had to go off and sail to make money to provide for his family, things like that. And one morning, he kisses his wife goodbye, gets on a boat, and they sail out, to fame and fortune. But on their way out, the boat encounters this massive storm, just this ungodly storm, a Cat 5 hurricane, if you will, bearing down upon them, and it just destroys the ship, kills everybody. And this storm is bound straight for Pawleys Island within the next 24 hours. When this storm gets there, it is going to wreak holy hell. And this guy has just died, leaving his wife and family behind. Now, what's a guy to do, right? Well, as fate would have it, the guy shows up on the beach on Pawleys Island, and immediately he comes to his family and his friends and he warns them and tells them to get out, to go, to leave. But when they ask him to go with them, he doesn't and instead disappears back into the water, just vanishes, as if he was never there. But, creepy guy shows up all tattered. You know him, you trust him, you love him. You get the heck out of there. So that's what the people did. They left Pawleys Island. They went inland. And sure enough, the storm came through. And the people that heard and heeded his warning, when they came back after the storm that caused massive damage, they found that their homes, including his home, was spared. Now, his home, by legend, still stands today, and we'll talk about it later on in this episode. It's called the Pelican Inn, and it's on Pawleys Island, on the south end of Pawleys Island, almost all the way to the end of the island before you get to where the marsh and the river cut in. Uh, that was the first appearance of the Gray Man, was him warning his family and friends. And ever since that day, when a storm has threatened the coast of South Carolina, and actually all the way up to Cape Hatteras, it seems, and as far south as Savannah, the Gray Man has appeared before the storm, warning people to get out of the way. The Gray Man appeared before the hurricane that hit in the 60s. The Gray Man appeared before Hugo. In fact, I was on Pawleys Island right before Hurricane Hugo. I went to go surfing with my cousin. And he got us arrested. And we got in a lot of trouble with my foster family. And there was a lot of yelling and screaming. But as we were getting taken off, this one guy comes up yelling and screaming that he saw the Gray Man by the pier. He saw him walking by the pier and said we all needed to get out of there. And of course, they were already evacuating Pawleys Island at the time, but people doubled their efforts. And this is when I heard the tale of the Gray Man and what was going on. And that Hurricane Hugo in 1989, split Pawleys Island in two. But surprisingly enough, several of the old homes, particularly the homes of those who left heeding the Gray Man's warnings, were spared. But the pier where the Gray Man was at, totally gone. Now, there have been videos supposedly of the gray man, pictures of the gray man before storms. The gray man was supposedly seen before Florence was coming in. The gray man was seen before Emily. The gray man was seen before Fran, before Gaston. The gray man has been seen several times before these storms came on land and caused the damage. So if you were ever in the South, in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and you should happen to be on the beach and you just happen to see a grayish looking man walking along the shoreline and he just suddenly disappears, that might be your clue to head for the hills because the storm's coming. And the Gray Man's not the only story from Polly's Island, of course. As I said, there is the Pelican Inn. Now, the Pelican Inn is rumored to be the Gray Man's home, but not everybody agrees with this 100%. However, the Pelican Inn has stood there since the early 1700s. It's one of the oldest houses on Polly's Island, and now it serves as a bed and breakfast and kind of a restaurant. Um, you can go there and get a great brunch. You know, if it's still running, and I do believe it still is. I can't remember who runs it. I believe it was the Gillespie's at one point. But great people, great place, wonderful atmosphere. If you don't mind having someone sitting on your meal. You see, it is rumored, whether it be the ghost of the Gray Man or the ghost of another sailor and his family, still haunt the Pelican Inn to this day. People who have gone to eat there say they have seen a young child playing on the stairs suddenly vanish. They have heard footsteps coming down the stairs when there's no one there. Doors will open. They've heard the tap in the bathroom turn on and turn off. One woman even said that she saw a woman in the mirror behind her when she was in the bathroom, and when she looked, there was no one there. And these regular occurrences are still being reported to this day at the Pelican Inn on Polly's Island. So, if you're ever looking for a nice meal and some company, go visit the Pelican Inn. You might have a good time. Things just might get a little spooky. Now we're going to move from Polly's Island for a bit. I know we were staying on the islands, but we're going to move down south to Georgetown, South Carolina. Now that's where I grew up for the most part of my youth. I moved to Georgetown, South Carolina in 1989, and I lived there well into 2000. I was even a firefighter in my early career for Georgetown City and Georgetown County Fire Department down there. Georgetown's a wonderful historic town. Lots of ghost stories. I'm going to do another episode of revisits on some of those stories soon. But I want to talk about one in particular. I want to talk about the story of the Patriot. Now, this happened in 1812. Actually, right before the War of 1812. Some of you may know of a young man by the name of Aaron Burr. He was a lawyer from New York. He was a bit of a politician. He fought in the Revolutionary War, was an aide to General George Washington. He was Thomas Jefferson's first vice president. And he's the guy who shot Alexander Hamilton. That Aaron Burr. Well, shooting Alexander Hamilton got Aaron Burr in a lot of trouble. Because even though they did it in Jersey and everything's legal in Jersey, he still shot and killed a man. So Burr fled from the country for a while, leaving behind his daughter Theodosia. Now, Theodosia had married a man named Ravenel who lived in South Carolina. I'm sure you've heard of the Ravenel Bridge and all kinds of things surrounding South Carolina. See, Ravenel at the time was the governor of South Carolina, and they happened to have a house, not just in Columbia, but one on Front Street in Georgetown, right there on the harbor, out looking over the ocean, where the boats would come in and come out. And Aaron, in 1812, came back to America. He had been pardoned by the president. He was now no longer considered an enemy. His accusations of treason had been dropped. He was able to come back home. And the first thing he wanted to do was to see his daughter, Theodosia, who he loved so much. So he sent out a message asking Theodosia to come visit him in New York. Now, Theodosia worried about this trip. She worried about going to New York. She worried that she would not see her father before she died. And she said this. She even said this to her husband, but her husband was sure everything was fine, but sent with her a doctor and a handmaiden. Now, before they left, the couple enjoyed a dance in their beautiful home there. Um, they had a night of wine and dancing and celebrating with people. And the next morning, Theodosia, her doctor, and her handmaiden boarded the ship known as the Patriot. The Patriot, after it left Georgetown Harbor, would never be seen again. It went down somewhere. But Theodosia would be seen again. Because shortly thereafter, the reports came of visions of Theodosia walking the stairs of the house on Front Street in Georgetown. People would hear music in the ballroom and see her dancing with no one. They would hear her dogs barking in the backyard. Now, this house, this house that Theodosia stayed in her last night on Earth, um, was right behind the house that I grew up in. I always thought they had dogs because I could hear the dogs barking at night. It upset my dog, Eddie. I had a black lab named Eddie. Loved Eddie to death. He was awesome. It's not the case. They never owned any dogs, but I would hear the dogs, even though they didn't own any dogs. And occasionally at night, you could hear music coming from the house. There was no music playing in the house because no one lived there at the time. It was actually a bed and breakfast at the time. So, yeah, if you ever get a chance to visit Georgetown, you can go and see the house where Theodosia Burr danced with her husband, the governor of South Carolina, before boarding the Patriot, and where she still dances to this day. And, you know, if you stay a night in a bed and breakfast, you might get to meet her as she's coming down the stairs or hear her dogs playing in the yard. Now, I know. We were kind of a downer on that one. I got to have something better, right? Nope, nothing better. We're going down to another island in South Carolina, this time Sullivan's Island. Sullivan's Island is a very interesting place. Um, it is the home of Fort Moultrie. Not to be confused with Fort Sumter, which is the big stone fort that sits in the middle of the Charleston Harbor. Fort Moultrie was actually a palmetto and wood and dirt fort built by General Moultrie during the Revolutionary War. And this is where one of the first naval battles of the Revolutionary War happened, and where they were able to hold off the British Navy with just a rusty band of, you know, farmers and lawyers just banding together as the revolution was forming, as the army was coming together. General Moultrie was able to get his men together and, using palmetto trees, build a fort that held off a former navy. And the reason being is the palmetto tree itself, and this is why South Carolina's flag has a palmetto tree on it. See, the palmetto trees are a very spongy material. So as the cannons would fire, normally when you fire a cannonball at something, it's going to blast through it and cause all kind of damage, send shrapnel, and make a hole. The palmetto trees, on the other hand, kind of caught the cannonballs and held them in place. They didn't give. They acted like the best kind of armor possible, meaning that every cannonball that was being fired at that fort was just getting stuck in the wall. And if they had the chance to get it, was getting fired right back at the Navy to sink those ships. And that gave us one of our first wins in the Revolutionary War, was won at Fort Moultrie. Now, years later, during the Civil War, Sullivan's Island would have a much darker day. Fort Moultrie was held by the Confederates, and the Union needed to take it. Again, this is a fort that was holding its own against navies, and that included the U.S. Navy during the Civil War. So they marched the 51st out of Massachusetts right onto that fort. And it was an uphill battle in which many, many, many soldiers died. There is a movie which culminates in this very battle. It's called Glory. It stars Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, Matthew Broderick's in it, Carrie Elway is in it. It is a wonderful movie that depicts this battle. Does it take some poetic license? Yeah, it does. But it depicts this massive battle that took place there as the Union soldiers charged and fell, taking this fort. And they did end up taking the fort, but they paid for it in blood. And it is said that to this day, the ghosts of many of those soldiers, both from the Revolutionary and the Civil War, walk the area where that fort once stood and haunt those grounds and still relive that battle. Anyway, that's a trio of stories from the islands of South Carolina. I hope you guys enjoyed them. I hope you guys were entertained. And I hope that you'll come back for the next revisit where we're going to go to some more fun places in South Carolina and all over the country, all over the world, really, as I do a couple more revisits getting into the 2025 spooky season. Again, remember you can support this show and my sister show, Valmont the Black Raven Chronicles, by going to patreon.com/The Carolina Storyteller. Ad-free episodes. Everywhere puts ads on your episodes except for my Patreon. No ads on the Patreon. You get bonus content, all kinds of funny things in the bonus content, shorts from the cast, behind the scenes stuff, extra stories that I don't want to put on other things. Check it out. You want to get over to the Patreon. You really do. $5 a month, you can get part. You can be part of the Storyteller Club, and you can hear all kinds of great stories over at thecarolinastoryteller.com. I'm sorry, patreon.com/The Carolina Storyteller. See, I mess up. I'm just like everybody else. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you guys for listening. And remember, stay spooky, my friends. I'll see you next time.